watching World News program with me, Miriam Zian. To the headlines. President Tebboune receives farewell visit from U.S. Ambassador as first Bashar Tindouf Garaj railway test run begins, and country condemns Israel's recognition of Somaliland at AU meeting. Amid ongoing shelling across Gaza, a Palestinian was killed and Khan Yunis as tensions rise. Qatar says complications are slowing the ceasefire agreement, is working with mediators to ensure a transition to its second phase, while the European Union warns against any actions that could block humanitarian aid to the Strip. On the Venezuela file, the United Nations stresses that the U.S. move makes the world less safe. The arrest of Maduro sparked a heated debate in Congress, and Russia calls for enabling Caracas to determine its own fate without foreign interference. And Algeria snatches victory over DRC Congo and qualifies to the quarterfinals with last-minute Boulbina goal. Welcome back to the details. First, Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune received on Tuesday the United States Ambassador to Algiers, Elizabeth Mouraben, who paid a farewell visit following the end of her tenure in the country, according to a statement from the Algerian presidency.
I had the wonderful opportunity to thank President Abdelmajid Tebboune for the great honor of representing the United States and working with him and with the Algerian government over the past 4 years. During these 4 years, I had a meaningful and rewarding experience in my professional career, and I am deeply grateful for the time I spent here in Algeria. This was not my first experience in the country, as I worked here from 2011 to 2014 as Deputy Chief of Mission at the U.S. Embassy, during which I developed deep feelings and a strong affection for this remarkable country. Algeria is truly a special nation, distinguished by its cultural richness, generosity, and the kindness of its people. The Algerian people will always remain close to my heart.
The Algerian Agency for Railway Investment Studies and Project Monitoring announced the start of the first technical trial runs on the Bashar Tindouf Garaj railway line. According to a statement from the agency, the inaugural test journey was conducted using a specially designated locomotive departing from Tindouf passenger station. The trial is part of efforts to develop the railway network in southwestern Algeria and to strengthen connections between mining areas and strategic infrastructure. The Algerian Minister of State and Foreign Affairs Ahmed Attaf met with International Organization for Migration Director General Amy Pope to discuss cooperation between Algeria and the IOM. According to the Algerian Foreign Ministry, Tuesday's meeting held during Pope's visit or official visit to Algeria focused on ways to strengthen ties and ensure effective management of migration-related challenges. And on Tuesday, Algeria and the International Organization for Migration signed an agreement to use the airport hotel in Dar el-Bida, Algiers, to host undocumented migrants enrolled in the Assistance for Voluntary Return and Reintegration program. The ceremony held at the Algiers Governorate headquarters was attended by Interior Minister Saïd Sayoud and IOM Director General Amy Pope. In a praise statement, Pope praised Algeria's responsible and humane management of irregular migration and its significant resource allocation, expressing readiness to further develop cooperation for lasting solutions.
L'OIM exprime sa profonde gratitude.
The International Organization for Migration expresses its sincere gratitude to Algeria for its support through this program, in addition to making a number of facilities available to establish centers dedicated to migrant workers prior to their return to their countries.
The Algerian State Minister and Foreign Affairs Ahmed Attaf took part on Tuesday in a ministerial meeting of the African Union Peace and Security Council held via video conference to discuss recent developments in the Federal Republic of Somalia, particularly Israel's move to recognize the so-called State of Somaliland. In his address, Minister Attaf reaffirmed Algeria's condemnation of Israel's unilateral action and expressed solidarity with Somalia.
Let me start by reiterating Algeria's strong condemnation of the recent unilateral recognition of the so-called State of Somaliland by the Israeli occupation authorities. In the same spirit, I would like to reaffirm Algeria's unwavering solidarity with the Federal Republic of Somalia in all its efforts aimed at preserving its sovereignty, national unity, and territorial integrity. In this regard, we should all be mindful of the fact that after having spread instability, tragedy, and chaos in the Middle East, through an unending series of military aggressions in Gaza, in the West Bank, in Lebanon, in Syria, in Yemen, and in Iran, the Israeli occupying power is now seeking to create a new source of tension and conflict in the Horn of Africa.
And he further stated that Israel's move is a matter of serious concern for Somalia, the African region, and the international community as a whole. Let's have a listen.
It is moreover a matter of continental concern, as the Israeli unilateral action constitutes a serious breach of one of the fundamental principles of the African normative framework, the principle of intangibility of borders established at the independence of our countries, a principle that has spared our continent the upheavals of numerous conflicts and shielded it against territorial disputes and secessionist movements. It is finally a matter of international concern, as the Israeli unilateral action represents a blatant violation of the core principles upon which the contemporary international order is founded, and which are enshrined in the United Nations Charter.
Minister Attaf also emphasized that these developments require a collective commitment to reinforcing African unity in the face of attempts to destabilize states, undermine their sovereignty, and threaten territorial integrity.
African unity in the defense of the normative collective framework that binds us together, including the sacred principle of intangibility of borders inherited at the independence of our countries. And last but not least, African unity in safeguarding a rule-based international order in which our countries can enjoy their rights and fulfill their duties on an equal footing with all other UN member states. It is only through unity that African countries can truly preserve their interests in a world that is increasingly shaped by hegemony, domination, total disregard for international law, and full disrespect for the United Nations Charter. I thank you.
And now, moving on to developments in occupied Palestine. A Palestinian was killed on Tuesday by Israeli occupation forces east of Khan Yunis as airstrikes, gunfire, and artillery shelling targeted several areas across the Gaza Strip. Gaza's ambulance and emergency services said an Israeli drone struck east of the city, while raids also hit Shuja'iyya Dir al-Balah and Khan Yunis, accompanied by heavy fire, the demolition of buildings, and the arrest of fishermen off the coast of Gaza City. The Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza said 2 fatalities reached hospitals in the past 24 hours, including one body that was recovered, along with 10 injuries, bringing the death toll since October 11 ceasefire to 24, while 1,199 injured and 685 bodies recovered. And Qatar's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Majid Al-Ansari said that there are several complications that require additional effort regarding the Gaza ceasefire agreement, stressing that Doha is working with mediators to reopen the Rafah border crossing and ensure the delivery of humanitarian aid.
The state of Qatar, together with the brotherly mediators in the Arab Republic of Egypt, the sisterly Republic of Turkey, and the United States of America, has been working tirelessly since the first day of signing the agreement to reach the second phase, through ongoing communications among the various parties. These communications are still underway. As we have stated before, there remain many obstacles. Many of them have been addressed through reaching understanding, but discussions on reaching this phase are still ongoing. Nevertheless, Qatar is working with its partners within this framework to reach agreements on reopening the Rafah crossing and moving to the second phase. At present, there is nothing new to announce, but we reaffirm that contacts are continuing in this regard.
The European Union warned that access to humanitarian aid to Gaza at the required scale is at risk following Israel's decision to bar 37 international relief organizations from operating in the Palestinian territories. In a joint statement on Tuesday, EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas, Mediterranean Commissioner Dubravka Šuica, and Equality and Crisis Management Commissioner Haj Al Habib stressed the need to enable international NGOs to operate sustainably to deliver aid swiftly, safely, and in sufficient quantities. And more than 160 Israeli settlers entered the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound on Tuesday morning through the Maghariba Gate under the protection of Israeli forces. Sources from Al-Quds says 163 settlers toured the compound and performed religious rituals as Zionist authorities imposed tight restrictions on Palestinian worshippers to facilitate the incursion. In Lebanon, several people were killed and others injured in Israeli airstrikes targeting different areas in the south. Lebanon's national news agency reported that an airstrike on a house in Khirbat Salam in the Bent Jbeil district killed 2 young men, while additional civilians were killed in the shelling that hit the town of Kafar Dunin. Several wounded were taken to hospitals for treatment. Lebanese President Joseph Aoun condemned the strikes, saying their timing coinciding with a meeting of the so-called Mechanism Committee raises serious questions about their intent. He said the attacks reflect a clear effort to undermine local, regional, and international efforts to halt the escalation. Aoun noted that the committee, set to meet on Wednesday, is supposed to work toward ending hostilities, restoring security in the south, ensuring Israeli withdrawal to the southern border, and securing the release of Lebanese detainees. In Sudan, the Doctors Network accused the Rapid Support Forces of killing more than 10 people, including children, in a drone attack on the city of Al Ubaid in North Kordofan state. In a statement on Tuesday, the network said the strike hit a home in the Jabalia neighborhood, killing 13 civilians, most of them children, describing the attack as a full-fledged war crime that deliberately targeted civilians. And Sudan's army announced that its forces carried out what it described as a successful strike on strategic positions held by the Rapid Support Forces in North Kordofan. Military sources told Al-24 News on Tuesday that army missile defenses targeted RSF deployments around the city of Nuhud, inflicting casualties and equipment losses. The European Union said it may reopen its mission in Port Sudan or Khartoum in the near future. During a meeting with the senior EU delegation in Port Sudan, Yassine Hisham, advisor to Sudan's Transitional Sovereignty Council, said the EU delegation highlighted efforts to re-establish the bloc as a key player in resolving the Sudanese crisis and to restore engagement with the Sudanese government. The Sovereignty Council reaffirmed the government's commitment to working towards shared goals that serve the Sudanese people and support peace and stability in the region. In Venezuela, security forces fired warning shots at drones flying over the area surrounding the presidential palace in Caracas on Monday evening at around 8 p.m. local time. An official source said the incident was triggered by unauthorized drone activity in central Caracas, stressing that police fired warning shots, no clashes occurred, and the situation remains calm. Videos showed a heavy security presence around the palace following the incident. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights said on Tuesday that the international community must make clear that U.S. intervention in Venezuela violates international law and makes countries around the world less safe. And speaking to reporters, OHCHR spokesperson Ravina Shamadasani said the events send a message that powerful actors can act with impunity.
It is clear that the operation undermined a fundamental principle of international law, that states must not threaten or use force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state. We fear that the current instability and further militarization in the country resulting from the U.S. intervention will only make the situation worse. This military intervention, which is in contravention of Venezuelan sovereignty and the UN Charter, damages the architecture of international security, making every country less safe.
And U.S. President Donald Trump said that Washington could support oil companies in rebuilding Venezuela's deteriorating energy infrastructure. In an interview with NBC News, Trump said such a major project could be completed in as little as 18 months, adding that oil companies would initially cover the high costs and later recover them either from the U.S. government or directly from Venezuelan oil revenues. The arrest of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has triggered more than outrage in Caracas. It has ignited a fierce political and legal battle on Capitol Hill. Republicans are largely defending the operation, arguing that the deployment of U.S. forces to Caracas was a law enforcement action, not a military operation, and therefore did not require congressional approval. Marwa Balaiwar has more details in this report.
The arrest of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has triggered more than outrage in Caracas. It has ignited a fierce political and legal battle on Capitol Hill. Republicans are largely defending the operation, arguing that the deployment of U.S. forces to Caracas was a law enforcement action, not a military operation, and therefore did not require congressional approval.
With regard to the war powers and the compliance with federal law, we are not at war. We do not have U.S. armed forces in Venezuela, and we are not occupying that country. The Constitution gives Congress the power to declare war, that is true. But it also vests the President of the United States with vast authorities as Commander-in-Chief.
But cracks are emerging inside the Republican Party itself. Some lawmakers are raising constitutional concerns, warning that bombing a foreign capital and removing its president sets a dangerous precedent in U.S. foreign policy. Senator Rand Paul has described the move as a clear violation of the Constitution. Democrats have been even more outspoken. They argue that only Venezuelans have the right to decide their country's future and that using military force without congressional authorization violates both the U.S. Constitution and international law.
Well, this briefing, while very extensive and long, posed far more questions than it ever answered. Their plan for the U.S. running Venezuela is vague, based on wishful thinking, and unsatisfying. I did not receive any assurances that we would not try to do the same thing in other countries. And in conclusion, when the United States engages in this kind of regime change and so-called nation building, it always ends up hurting the United States.
Democratic leader.
Democrats go further, saying the operation was driven by oil interests, not democracy, and that the Trump administration effectively kept Maduro's political structure in place, prolonging Venezuela's crisis under a new U.S. approach. Now the stakes are rising. The Senate is expected to vote this week on a resolution that would block any further military action against Venezuela without congressional approval, a direct challenge to presidential war powers. A constitutional showdown is unfolding in Washington, with Venezuela at the center of the struggle between America's branches of power.
And Colombia said it will continue working with the United States to combat drug trafficking using U.S. intelligence and technology. Interior Minister Armando Bendetti said in a video message alongside Justice Minister Andrés Hidaraga that Bogota has informed Washington it will maintain coordination and cooperation in counter-narcotics efforts. Hidaraga added that Colombia will intensify its crackdown on drug trafficking, particularly along the Colombian-Venezuelan border.
The Colombian government, through the Interior Ministry and Justice Ministry, informs the United States government through one of their intelligence agencies that we will continue coordinating and cooperating in the fight against drug trafficking, based on intelligence and their technology, to destroy laboratories and criminal structures and their camps.
Cuba's Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez accused U.S. President Donald Trump of showing profound ignorance about Cuba's spreading falsehoods and threatening the Cuban people, saying the nation would defend itself against any imperial aggression. In Brazil, hundreds of protesters marched in central Rio de Janeiro against the U.S. military operation in Venezuela, waving leftist party and labor union flags and demanding the release of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Russia welcomed the appointment of Delcy Rodriguez as interim president of Venezuela, stressing that Venezuelans alone should decide their future without foreign interference, and reaffirming support for the country's sovereignty. China said no country has the right to act as the world's police or judge, urging respect for international law, the UN Charter, and people's right to choose their own development paths. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi condemned the U.S. military action in Venezuela and the detention of its president and his wife as a grave violation of international law, warning in talks with his Brazilian counterpart that such unilateral moves undermine the global legal order and legitimize the use of force. Iran's Supreme Defense Council reaffirmed its firm rejection of threatening language in statements it described as interference in the internal affairs of the Islamic Republic. In a statement, the Council stressed that Iran's security independence and territorial integrity are red lines that cannot be crossed under any circumstances, warning that any attack or continued hostile approach toward the country would be met with a proportionate, firm and decisive response. Greenland's Prime Minister Jens Frederik Nielsen said the United States should seek respectful dialogue with the Arctic island. In a social media statement on Tuesday, he emphasized that any dialogue must take place through appropriate diplomatic and political channels and be based on existing agreements. Leaders of Germany, Italy, Poland, Spain, the United Kingdom, France and Denmark said Greenland belongs to its people. In a joint statement published Tuesday, the European leaders stressed that only Denmark and Greenland have the authority to make decisions regarding matters related to their relationship. Several people were killed and others injured in an attack that Ukraine accused Russia of carrying out, targeting the regions of Zaporizhzhia, Kherson, and Donetsk. Media outlets citing Ukrainian authorities reported that a Russian strike on the three regions killed 3 people and wounded others. Ukrainian officials also accused Russia of launching 5 missile attacks on Kharkiv on Monday and of striking a facility owned by the U.S. agricultural company Bunch in the city of Dnipro in the southeast of the country. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha said the Dnipro attack confirms that Russian forces are targeting American companies. The Kharkiv Regional Prosecutor's Office said at least 1 civilian was wounded, while Dnipro Mayor Boris Filatov said the strike on the Bunch facility caused the leakage of 300 tons of sunflower oil. Moscow issued no immediate comments on the accusations. And to wrap up on a lighter note, in sports, the Algerian national team has qualified for the Africa Cup of Nations quarterfinals with merit following their 1-0 victory over the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The match ended goalless in regular time, but in extra time, substitute Adel Boulbina scored the decisive goal in the 119th minute. With this win, Riyad Mahrez and his teammates continue their tournament journey, reaching the quarterfinals and setting up a highly anticipated match against Nigeria next Saturday at 5 p.m.
Penso che prima cosa voglio e cosa posso dire che è stata una partita vera.
What can I say? It was a real match, played well by both sides, with strong play throughout. In the end, we won. I think we deserved it. Congratulations to my players who kept the opponent in check for almost 2/3 of the game. We were good in our build-up play and in defense. We played a good match both with and without the ball. I think my players, despite various difficulties, worked hard, formed a united and cohesive group, and with great positivity, they turned this qualification in our favor.
I have always dreamed of being part of the national team on such a big stage. It's something I hold very close to my heart, and it's a huge honor to represent a team of this stature. I worked extremely hard for this moment. I think every young footballer dreams of one day representing his country, and thank God I was given that opportunity. But above everything else, what matters most is that we won the game.
That's the end of our program. Thanks for your kind attention, and we'll see you tomorrow.